All right, here we are with another episode of the High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Afternoon, Sal.
Afternoon, Ryan.
How's it going today?
Wonderful, sir.
Well, good. Hey, we're gonna have a fun interview today. We have a professional. He's already told us he's a professional. So we have Eric Pfieffer, VP of Hoosier Ag Today, with us, and so this is not our first interview with Hoosier Ag Today, but you guys are a really good partner for us and a really good partner for agriculture in the state of Indiana and Michigan, I know. So we'll get into that later. But Eric, before we even get into much personal information from you, you get hit with the question of the day. And your question of the day.
Oh, man, right off the bat. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, yeah. I
got to get prepped here. Let's go. All right.
All right. But yeah. So if you're warmed up and you've stretched, here's your question of the day. So if you could make one office rule that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
Well, see, so lucky for me, guys, this studio you see here behind me, this is in my basement. I work from home.
You better be careful then.
So the only office rule is if I could get people to shut their mouth when I'm recording, and I'm talking about my 13-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 8-year-old. For some reason, someone thought it was a good idea to put just outside my door here, put a Pop-A-Shot and a little mini basketball hoop for the kids to play on.
Nice.
But I do that like all summer. My wife is a second grade teacher, so they're all home over the summer. So from that standpoint, yeah, that would be it. But I'll say, in working in an office setting, I do, occasionally see my other coworkers. One big thing with me is if you come to me with a problem, I'd love for you to have like two potential solutions. I feel like that's a good office rule to have. I just feel like, you should at least have one fix to the problem, maybe two, and then we can figure it out from there. That way we're just not filled with problems all the time. So I would have to say that would be my one rule I'd put in place.
That'd be kind of nice to have
label your food, or otherwise I'm going to eat it.
Exactly. I like the solution one. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
That's a good one. Thanks. Well, Sal, what do you got?
Yeah.
I think mine would be, we got a really nice corporate office here in Seymour with Premier Companies, and just the public areas, just pick up, clean up, tidy up, just kind of tidy up after yourselves, and whether you're getting coffee or, because we have customers and suppliers and things that come through the building, and just probably keep it cleaner and nicer than you would at home. That would be my office rule, I think. That and make coffee.
And make coffee.
See,
and fill the water.
I could put that in for the kids too if they keep their things clean.
Good luck with that.
That's very much wishful thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Well, mine, I think, Sal, this one's directed kind of at you.
Oh boy.
But I think there ought to be a survey sheet sent around, and at least 80% affirm before you turn the air conditioner on. because Sal will turn the air on when the office gets to about 65. And then it's just from there, you're hunting for coats. Yeah, people have space heaters in their office. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it gets cold, and Sal wants to find the air conditioning. So I think there has to be 80% approval before the AC can be turned on.
Not true. I'm so not represented
correctly. It absolutely is true. It's on the internet now, so it's true.
Have you ever seen that episode of The Office where Dwight Truitt owns the building and he starts putting lock boxes around the thermostat? I think that's what Ryan's going to start doing around there.
Exactly right.
It.
I mean, there's remote controls for these air conditioners, and he just walks in. The first thing he does, he grabs that, he puts his hand, you're just like, here we go. Hypothermia. We're just minutes away from it.
I'm going to sweat them out next time. Everybody be hot. And I'm like, nope, I'm not touching it.
I guarantee you there's two of us, at least in the boardroom, that won't say anything about being too warm. So that's enough of that nonsense. So, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. And you've been a great partner for us. And we appreciate the platform that we have to advertise and market on with Hoosier Ag Today. So tell us about yourself first. Let's talk about your career prior to and now with Hoosier Ag Today.
Sure, absolutely. No, thank you for having me on. We do appreciate the partnership. This is a unique one. Normally it's me hosting the podcast, and I don't know that they say like the best lawyers make the worst clients. The best podcast, they make the worst guests. I'm hoping to like dispel that. No, me in a nutshell. Again, I live here in West Lafayette. This is my home studio here, and I live here with my smoking hot wife, Aubrey. I have to put that in there, otherwise she doesn't listen to the things I do. I have to tell her I mentioned her in that way so that she'll come in and watch and listen. Otherwise, she's uninterested. But 3 kids, as I mentioned, and we love it here in West Lafayette. I got started in radio back in high school. I was a junior at Logansport High School, where I grew up there in Cass County, Indiana, and I was a baseball player. I was on the varsity baseball team, and the local radio station would come and interview a spotlight player before each game. And I was the spotlight player that day, and apparently I was in a good mood that day. I was cracking some jokes with the play-by-play guy that was doing the interview, and throwing some shade at my coach that was out there hitting some ground balls, and it was a good interview. And the general manager of the radio station went to his daughter and said, "Hey, you know this Eric Pfieffer guy, right? Like you go to school with him? Have him come talk to me about a job." And I went in, talked to him about a job, and sure enough, he hired me on the spot. That general manager was Andy Eubank.
Nice.
And I work for him here still today at Hoosier Ag Today. And his daughter, that's my smoking hot wife, Aubrey. So it's been just this whirlwind here of getting into radio and falling in love with it. It's a radio love story, falling in love with my wife throughout the entire way. It's just been really cool. And Andy and I have worked together now for a number of years and get along great. And it's really been an experience. But I took some time off. I guess I didn't really take some time off radio, but full-time radio. I worked in retail for a long time, hated it. Still, even while I was doing that, I would do sports play-by-play for local high schools, Lewis Cass there in Walton and Galveston. I would do their football and basketball play-by-play on the weekends just to stay involved with radio. And really, up to that point, I didn't know a whole lot about agriculture. The closest I'd really gotten, I emceed a few Cass County 4-H Fair Queen contests. That was about as close as I got. And so when it came time and Andy was looking at, maybe expanding some things at Hoosier Ag Today, this would have been about 7 years ago now, because I just celebrated my 7th anniversary with HAT here a couple of weeks ago. It was, hey, radio, we can teach you the rest. And we've got farmers that will take you under their wing and teach you. And that's exactly what's happened. I have learned so much about farming, about agriculture, about the farmers in this community. It's been pretty incredible. I wouldn't have imagined it. I always thought my dream job would be, being a sportscaster at ESPN or, doing Monday Night Football, whatever the case may be. But heck, this is it. The Indiana agriculture community is just tremendous to work with. And I found it here with Hoosier Ag Today. It's been a pretty awesome 7 years.
Great.
Nice. Well, Eric, tell us a little bit about Hoosier Ag Today. Tell us about the kind of the format and how it's changed over the years, and what it started out as and what it is today.
Well, we've always been a radio network. We have radio stations across the state, about 70 radio stations we're on here in Indiana, airing our ag programming. We talk about farm news. We talk about the weather. We have our own meteorologist, and Ryan Martin, who's a Purdue-educated meteorologist and is a farmer himself up in northern Indiana. So he gives all of that information. We talk with a different market analyst each day to talk about what the markets are doing, going up and down, and why. So that's really been our format since we started back in 2006. Gary Truitt founded Hoosier Ag Today back then. He saw that the guy's he's a Hall of Famer, Gary Truitt. In fact, he is the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. got the little pennant here,
Nice.
NAFB back here in the background. He is in the NAFB Hall of Fame. And it's for, he's created 2 different farm networks in Indiana. One got sold and went elsewhere. And then when that all happened, he just thought this doesn't seem right. So he went off on his own and started his own network with Hoosier Ag Today. And it's grown into what it is today, which is just a testament to Gary and his work ethic. It's been incredible what he's built. And that was back in 2006. And we offer just not the programs to our radio stations, which are about 15 a day or so that they can choose from and put on there. But we put out a daily newsletter. We have our social media accounts, Facebook, X now. I don't know. Formerly Twitter. Apparently everyone has to put.
You have to put formerly Twitter on there
for 2 or 3 more years.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Till they change it again.
At least 2 or 3 more years. Yeah. And what do you call them now? They're not still tweets, right? You've X's and O's. Like,
I don't know.
That's an old country song.
Formerly known as tweets.
Post-production, right? Yeah. But there are just so many things we put out there. I mentioned I host a podcast as well. Hoosier Ag Today has a daily podcast that you can hear at our website, HoosierAgToday.com. We've also branched off a little bit and done some other things. We have a soil health podcast that we've been doing for a number of years now, talking about the different conservation efforts that are underway in Indiana. Indiana is a leader in the conservation space, as I'm sure you guys know. And it's just talking with other farmers who are conservation minded. How do you get started in this space if you're curious about that? So we've been doing that for a number of years now, and you can find that at our website. And I've also been hosting the Purdue Crop Chat podcast. It's a conversation that we have at least once a month, if not a couple times a month, when it's right in the heart of growing season. We'll get together a couple of times. I go and meet with Purdue Extension and their corn and soybean specialists, Dan Quinn and Sean Castile, and we talk agronomy. We talk what the current conditions are. The most recent podcast, we talked about fashion. I got them some new hats. I don't have mine with me. Too bad. It's a cute hat.
And you didn't refer to them by their nicknames, by their. You didn't.
What's that?
You didn't refer to them by their nicknames of what? Corn Quinn and Soybean Castile.
And Soybean Sean Castile. Dan Corn Quinn. We also called Dan Dancing Queen Dan every once in a while. When we were worried about drought last year, Sean brought up a video of Dan dancing at his wedding to ABBA's Dancing Queen, and boom, rain started. That's the rain dance.
Oh my God!
Dancing Queen Dan.
Now we know
to get out there and turn on Dancing Queen. We're good to go. We'll get some rain in no time.
Well, I don't know how much dance he's been doing here lately, but shut him off for there.
I know. I'm thinking about taking his radio away from him, but then he can't listen to Hoosier Ag Today.
There
so,
you go.
But no, we do a lot in that space, and really we as kind of I oversee our news area, and what I really see as our goal is to educate farmers. First and foremost, that's why we're here. We want to educate farmers and let them know all of the important things that are going to impact their operation, impact their business. People forget that farmers aren't just farmers. They're small businesses. So, we try to bring them all of that information. And then, secondarily, but probably just as important, is we try to educate the public about what farmers do and how they're stewards of the land, how they are, proper stewards of animals. They care about animal husbandry. All the good things that farmers do, but oftentimes get blamed for, like ridiculous things. We're trying to change some of that narrative and be an advocate for farmers. That's really what we see ourselves are here at Hoosier Ag Today. And we take that pretty seriously. We enjoy getting to know these farmers and telling their story because it's important.
For sure.
Do you think that's changed any, Eric, as far as like from a Hoosier Ag Today standpoint? Did they switch kind of from becoming a news or information, and I don't mean a complete switch, but more into an advocacy and almost like a representation? I mean, because it kind of feels like as the farming community gets smaller and smaller, that there's just less voices. And And then you get flipped over to where the loudest voices are the only ones that are heard.
And that's unfortunate. But yes, I would say that probably not even intentionally. That's what it's kind of become. And largely, we still do news. I mean, if there's news out there, we're still going to bring it up. You can look to. I was just talking with someone yesterday about Prop 12 and what's happening out in California with pork only being able to sell certain kinds of pork that's been raised just how they want it, even if it's here in Indiana. That's news, and that's stuff that our farmers need to know. But I think, and you guys had CJ on, CJ Miller. He has been really, really good at this, of finding the stories about farmers. He managed to somehow find, and CJ, he can talk his way out of anything. he managed to find, just by chatting some people up, this love story that happened at the Indiana State Fair. They met at the state fair, right there in the hog barn, and he got down on one knee right there on the dirt, and that's where he proposed. And they've been married for 50 some years. Those are the kinds of things. CJ's really good at hunting those things out. And those are the really interesting stories that just, remind people, hey, farmers are, real people too. Yes, they feed, they clothe, they fuel us. I mean, all these things. But to your question, have we become kind of this advocacy piece? In a way, yeah. Because what people also need to realize is we are an agribusiness. Hoosier Ag Today, we're not just media. We're an agribusiness. We are dependent upon Indiana farmers doing well. If they're doing well, they're buying more stuff from the people that advertise with us, and the people that advertise with us will advertise more with us. It just kind of makes the whole thing go round. So, yeah, we're an agribusiness too, and yeah, we want to tell the good stories of this industry because there are a ton. But yeah, there are still some bad news things, and we got to share that too.
Well, let's run down that path, Eric, just for a little bit. So every morning at 6 a.m., my email dings, and I know it's the Hoosier Ag Today email that I look forward to every weekday, and so I can scroll quickly down to Ryan Martin's forecast, first thing that I do, and then I go back and look at the articles, and it does always amaze me that you have a story, you have multiple stories every day. So you've inserted yourself and have managed to get yourself into so many interviews, from, the head of the Indiana State Department of Ag to, the Taste of Excellence, the pork meetings, to soil conservation, to doing this kind of thing. So what kind of interviews have you been doing here lately? What subject matter and stories have really resonated to you? And I mean, we've got legislative session in and farm bill talk, and I know that you're right in the middle of that. So how do you get in those rooms, and how do you find out about all these stories? And then what are your top of minds right now?
Well, you mentioned a lot of it there, and I'll admit, I'm a bit of a policy guy. Coming into Hoosier Ag Today, I mentioned I wasn't real big on agriculture, but the one thing that I could really wrap my head around pretty quickly was policy related to agriculture. That wasn't, what's this thing on the farm and what do you do with it? Though I have learned a lot of that too here in recent years. But policy is really where I can get in, and I can hold my own in a conversation about farm policy. The farm bill you mentioned, this thing is just dragging on. And I remember I was traveling around the state, going on a little speaking circuit just a little over a year ago, talking about the farm bill. And everyone in Congress, you can look at Debbie Stabenow, the Senate Ag Committee chairwoman, G.T. Thompson, the House Ag Committee chairman. Everyone was saying, oh, yeah, we're going to get this thing done. It's not going to be a problem. We're going to be able to get this thing written. No big deal. We'll have it done. No. I knew. I mean, there's just no way that they were going to get this thing done on time. And I kept asking folks. I would ask Senator Braun, who's on the Senate Ag Committee, will bipartisan politics get in the way of this? I don't think so. If it does, that'll be a real shame because this has been the most bipartisan committee for decades. Well, look what happened. And it wasn't necessarily the issue of the Senate Ag Committee or the House Ag Committee. It was bipartisan politics. The search for a new speaker took forever and took up a bunch of floor time. They're taking up a bunch of floor time now with trying to get just regular budgets passed that include things like USDA funding. We're going to take a long time to get there, and that's where these relationships that we've built with some of these lawmakers, some of their staff, that's where some of the perspective comes from. We have great relationships with our Indiana legislators. Jim Baird, who's on the House Ag Committee, he's actually my representative up here in the West Lafayette, Tippecanoe County area. We have very open relationship with him and with Braun and with Senator Todd Young. And then you talk about from the Indiana legislative session. I mentioned very early on about the farmer that take me under his wings and teach me some things. One really important one to me was Kendall Colt. Kendall is currently the Indiana Farm Bureau vice president, but also an Indiana representative at the state house. I mean, he's in it now, and having conversations with him and with others in that building. Our relationships with organizations like the one that you guys belong to, we do too, the Agribusiness Council of Indiana and Bruce Kettler, looking at the folks at Indiana Corn and Soy, their organizations, their policy organizations, Indiana Farm Bureau. We have good, solid communication with those folks. And that's what, for me, it's been 7 years now on the job. For CJ, it's been a few years now. It's relationship building. And again, we're a part of this community. We really believe, we're an agribusiness too. We want to be a part of it, not just the ones from the outside looking in and reporting on it. So it's our relationships. And I credit that, again, back to Gary Truitt. He's had relationships for decades now with folks in the Indiana ag community, Andy Eubank as well. Myself, CJ, we all kind of have our own contacts that we reach out to, and it's fun. It's kind of good to know the backstory, the stories that I could tell, but I can't because it's for public consumption. That would probably make for a far better podcast than what I'm giving you now. So I apologize. There are some good stories out there. But that's what it's the relationships, Ryan. And that's what business, I'm sure, is about all for you guys. I mean, the agriculture community it's a relationship business,
sure.
Period. And it's the same with us.
Absolutely.
Well, Eric, so, and with your network and with how, embedded, with Hoosier Ag Today is with Indiana agriculture, and you mentioned the Agribusiness Council of Indiana, and from your perspective, after being involved and being part of the advocacy and being part of that, just the public information piece of Indiana, what's some of the biggest challenges that Indiana agriculture is going to face coming in the next 5 years or so?
Well, we could talk about all those policy things. We got to get a farm bill done. I don't think it's going to get done before this presidential election. You can put me on the record there. I just don't think it'll happen. People are holding out hope that it might happen here in March, April, but it's going to get kicked down the road, and there are ramifications to that can move on a little bit. But thinking more broadly, I think one big one, consolidation. We've seen that now for a long time. Consolidation of farms, consolidations of ag businesses. You already mentioned, Sal, the fewer people that we're seeing in agriculture now. I don't see that trend necessarily turning around. As unfortunate as it is, I don't know that that's going to turn around anytime soon. The average age of the farmer is getting up there. I don't know where it's at now, but it was pretty darn close to 60 last check. These are going to be things that we do have to figure out. Right now, one big topic, if you go to like any meeting, I was at a meeting yesterday, and they've got an attorney there talking about farm succession. This is a hot topic given that average age of the American farmer, the Indiana farmer. What is the next step for the farm? And can you set it up in a way that, you want to be nice to your kids, but can you penalize them if they want to sell the farm and, turn it into development or whatever the case? I mean, there are different things being discussed there. I think that, you say over the next 5 years, this one might be a bit more longer term. But it's interesting to think about and discuss and talk about. If you don't have a succession plan in place, if you don't have a transition plan in place, it could be a rough go for you. So I think that's one thing. And then I think, again, thinking more broadly, and this is where we try to help, I think transparency. I think that you mentioned already the voices that people are hearing are just the loud ones. And they're not necessarily in agriculture. I already brought up Prop 12 and what's happening out in California, just to bring people up to speed on what's happening there. Again, pork in California right now, if you're going to sell pork in California, it has to be raised according to their standards, what they want. That pig needs to be raised in a pen of a certain size. Otherwise, they believe it to be inhumane. There are other bills like this that are popping up in other states. It's a bigger issue than just pork in California. This is going to be, any kind of, infrastructure. Like you want to start. There are states that are going to say you can't send pork through our state if it wasn't raised this way. Like, don't put it on a truck and send it through our state. You're going to have to go around if you want to raise it this way. And that could go to any other product. Any product, not just an ag product, any product. But think about the beef industry. Think about, I don't know, fish. I mean, anything. We could have similar issues like this that are going to impact things. And that's why the Supreme Court ruling was so disappointing. That kind of kicked this back and said, no, it's lawful. If something's going to happen, the legislature is going to have to kick in and say, nope, we can't do this. But it could get ugly. And what's driving this are these animal activist groups. And again, take whatever side you want. This could get ugly. Not being able to send our products to certain places is just going to shut down the marketplace in certain parts of the country, parts of the world. We've been dealing with some of this over in the European Union for a long time. They only want certain organic things. This could get messy. And when I talk about transparency, I talk about farmers telling that story of, again, we do care about animal care. They pork farmers, they're out front on this. They are tremendous with animal care and what they know and what they've been taught and what they've learned, what they've done with research. But the animal activist voices are louder. And that's why things like Prop 12 in California can get through.
They're extremely loud. They can affect it. They affect the buyer, which in turn, the buyer, the consumer, the individual consumer walking through the grocery store, which then their opinions affect those who are buying the meat and putting it on their shelves, which then that just rolls backwards to the processing plant and then then eventually gets back to the farm. And all of those decisions being made, that goes, and ultimately the end result is devastation to the person who's in those barns every day, who's not been asked about what the comfort level of that animal is and what humane conditions exist and the animal husbandry practices that are put into place. I mean, this is this is obviously it's been very important to me over the last few years. But nobody making these decisions, this per certain square footage or all of these, there's a lot of likelihood they've never even been in a hog barn.
They've got no experience.
Yeah, there's no experience, and any decision made like that, unfortunately, the world as we continue to be outnumbered, it's going to be worse and worse and worse. And you talk about land use, animal husbandry, whatever it might be, the farther people get away from the farm and the less connection they would have to even the guy who last operated that farm or the last time they walked through a hog barn or they don't even know the last person in their family that walked through a hog barn, but yet they feel like they're all of a sudden experts on how that animal ought to be raised. And you take that power out of the farmer whose number one goal is to make sure that a healthy, happy animal is the one that's going to make him the most money. So he has zero incentive to make that animal uncomfortable. And it's aggravating.
Well,
so.
and even bigger than that, and the transparency part, that's where we're trying to help farmers, be their voice, get that story out there so people can understand that part of it. What you just said, we need more farmers to step up and be like, hey, we do care. We want to do it this way. And that's where we try to help with that. But you think about what's happening in California. Prop 12 was something that was voted on. The public voted on this, but did they really know the consequences? Someone with a really loud voice went out there and said, hey, this is happening and it's inhumane. They didn't tell them, oh gosh, this sounds terrible. If I mark, I'm in support of this Prop 12, that their pork prices were going to go up significantly, which we've already seen. Who does that hurt?
Or the mortality rate goes up. I mean, there's a plethora of things that happen that none of them are good. I mean, the outcome is opposite of what they're trying to do.
And you know what, Sal? It's interesting. I was hearing from the president of the National Pork Producers Council, and there's all this going on about Prop 12 and what it could do to their market. All the money that they would have to spend to update their farm to get it compliant with California's Prop 12 so that they could still sell stuff there. You know what he was worried about? He was worried about the lesser fortunate kids and families in California that are no longer going to be able to afford this tremendous product that provides the nutrition to help keep them healthy and alive.
Yep.
Tell me that's not a story that needs to be told by a farmer through us. That's what he was worried about. And that's, again, why I love this industry and why we so badly need to help them tell their story, because that's where farmers' heart is. I mean, that touched me. I mean, like, that's what he was concerned about with all of these things swirling around.
Because he was probably likely staring down a several $100,000 bill to make his operation compliant. And
absolutely,
so it was going to be a substantial investment for him for no more money, probably less money on his revenue side. And his concern is that. But boy, you don't get to hear that. You guys are going to have to continue to tell it. We have to tell it. Everyone. I mean, that's why we're doing this. And it's been a couple years, and now it's starting to get some traction, and several people watching and listening and downloading. But that's the message that has to be there every day.
Absolutely, we're trying to do the same thing. I mean, this if you really think about where the farmer's heart is, I mean, we're right there with you. We want to help you tell this story. That's where we're at, and so transparency. And just along that same line, it's already happened. Consumers want to know more about where their food comes from. You could say that was the starting point of Prop 12, but really here in Indiana, consumers want to know what it is they're eating, where it came from, and the more that we can help tell that story of what farmers are doing, how they're doing it, and how they're doing it the right ways. Yeah, we're on board for that.
Yeah, it's not that a farmer doesn't want to tell the story. Some of them will do it well, but others, it's not that they have anything to hide. They're just not real
No.
outward going people. I mean, they built this business and it's sort of been theirs and it's family ran, and there's not even a lot of outside employees that work on that farm. So they're just naturally not going to go out and do it. And if we could manage to continue to do it in a manner that doesn't inflict any harm on them, and by that saying, I talked to a friend of mine who raises a substantial amount of livestock, and a conversation came up a couple of years ago when the turkeys at Thanksgiving, if you flipped it over on the back, it said this bird was raised by such and such farm, and there's a QR code you could scan it, or I think that's how it was set up. There's a QR code you could scan it. You could know more about their farm. And he said, I think that is probably the right thing for the industry, and it's probably the right thing for us to add a human side to this. But he said it also scares me to death that that much information is going to be available to all the nefarious things that might come from that. He's like, I'm not 100% sure I want them to know how many kids I have, how old they are, and where they live. And it's that's a real concern.
Well, and we've seen even here in Indiana, animal activists infiltrating the farm and trying to pose things the way they want it to be portrayed, and sending videos out and calling out this particular place for poor animal husbandry and everything else. And again, this is where we've gotten. I don't see it going away. Folks just have to be more prepared for it. And again, trying to get the story out is so huge. And I applaud, our farmers that sit on the boards of directors for our commodity organizations, the Indiana Corn Marketing Council, the Indiana Soybean Alliance, Indiana Pork, Indiana Beef, the American Dairy Association. All of these folks are essentially stepping up and saying, yes, I want to help direct, funds that are coming into the organization and how we can help grow our product, how we can help grow our industry. But they're also essentially stepping up and saying, I'm going to be a spokesman. I want to be a spokesperson for this industry. Because then they get stuck talking with guys like me that have all the questions, and they do a fantastic job. And it's actually fun for me to see now that I've been in this position for a while. There are some folks that when I first jumped on, they were a little hesitant to talk to me. I put the microphone in their face and they're like, I'm good. I don't want to do this. But now they're pros at it. And it's been fun to watch, fun to see from my standpoint, farmers growing in that way, because it takes teamwork. I'm nothing without the farmers. And when I've got a farmer on that can explain everything, they're a lot smarter about farming than I am. So it's good to see that they're willing to step up and talk about that. But your point's well taken. There's a risk reward to it. You're putting yourself out there, but you're putting yourself out there, and folks can come find you then, and we don't want that. So yeah, it's a tough thing to balance.
For sure. One quick question, and then we would be respectful of your time. But you talked about you applaud farmers who sit on those boards and take those positions of representation. The willingness of people. That used to be the big thing. A lot of farmers back, and I don't necessarily want to date anyone, but you go back a few years, and that was the thing. That was active candidacies, that those campaigns, people wanted on those boards, and now you could open those positions up, and there's some unwillingness to even do it, whether it's time commitment or just not general understanding of maybe those positions have been held at such a length that we forgot to pass on how important that is and what needs to be done for that next generation. Is there any place out there that opens that up to say, here's what happens when you're a member of the pork board? Here are the ideas and the things that come in front of you that these are the decisions you'll make. I think a lot of people are like, I have no idea what that even means. We have a board of directors as well, and I think that it's just a different dynamic when those positions open up. There's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like the willingness that there was several years ago. So, how do we get people informed that say you sit on that board? Here's the things that you have control over. Here's the decisions you make.
Yeah, that's something that we're working on hard here too. It's an issue. One of the things that I heard early on, we talk about checkoffs. For every bushel sold, percentage goes into the checkoff, and then this board of director farmers will decide where that money goes. A lot of folks, when I first started, they would question, well, where does the money go? Even though they could get stats from some of these organizations. I'm trying to remember the one is like for every dollar invested in the Indiana Soybean Alliance, like $13, $14 come back to the farm, just in research, in marketing. And you can look at that and wonder, how does that work?
Right.
The Indiana Soybean Alliance actually took a big step here recently, and it was tremendous. They invited me on one of their international trips, one of the trips that they take to kind of see what their marketing dollars are doing. We went down to Panama just before Christmas. And one reason why was to look at the Panama Canal. There are some serious transport issues happening there right now due to drought conditions. We've heard about drought conditions on the Mississippi River that we've been experiencing here over the past couple of years, causing some transit issues. Well, once it gets down there, it goes out and it tries to get through the Panama Canal. There are issues there. There's about half the traffic going through the canal right now than usual. So we went down to check on that. But while we were there, we also got to meet with members of U.S. Pork. And so the Indiana Soybean Alliance, their board of directors said, yeah, we're going to spend this money on this project in Central America to support pork producers. Now, why would they do that? Well, you guys well know the soybeans that are made here make great meal for the pigs that are grown here. If we can sell more pork, then we can sell more soybeans here right in our backyard. So how do we sell more pork internationally so that we can move that soybean pile as well? We got to go down. We went on grocery store tours and just looked at how U.S. meat is positioned in those grocery stores. Could we position them better? What are these programs doing with the money? And they're doing fantastic things, by the way, to really move that pile. So bringing me along, some people would look at it and be like, oh, they're going to Panama. They're, find a beach or two,
Why wouldn't you?
I can tell you, we didn't even go by a beach. In fact, we chuckled. One of the tour guides was like, oh, the beaches here in Panama are incredible. And he was pointing to, it was like a mud covered, I wouldn't go out there if my life depended on it. That wasn't a beach, buddy. I get what you're saying, but yeah, no, we didn't come near one. It was a few days of just constant meetings and presentations and really seeing how these dollars are impacting things. And that's the type of research that needs to be done. Firsthand research, go down, see what's happening. And it truly was an amazing experience. And you can find some of my coverage if you just search Panama at HoosierAgToday.com. And you can get a better idea of what organizations like the Indiana Soybean Alliance are doing. And if you were to become a director on that board, what types of opportunities you would have to help direct those funds and take some of these trips. No, not for a vacation, but to help push things for the industry. Again, these guys are so much smarter than I am. They had questions I would never have thought of, just about the product placement, how it gets there. It really was just an incredible eye-opening trip for me. I have a much better understanding now of what the checkoff is, and I hope that my articles maybe open that up to some other folks. But anytime they want to take me on another trip, I know it's a busy couple days. I was exhausted afterward, but it's important. It's really important.
Yeah, I followed that.
And
That was good. That was good.
Yeah. And trying to do, things like that, I think that might be part of this, Ryan, is, we talked about that average age of the Indiana farmer. Some folks, they want to hold off and maybe not do something like this until maybe they've retired. But as you and I know, many farmers don't retire. They hang around. They want to be part of it, and I get it. But this is important too, not just for your farm, but all farms in Indiana. Getting on these boards, representing them, and all new ideas are welcome. I know that much. They're always looking for new ideas and new people to spread those ideas. I would urge you to reach out to those organizations. Hey, how can I help?
Yeah, that's good.
How can I help? It's a simple question, and they can point you in the right direction and figure out what the best option is going to be.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll start with the FFA and the 4-H groups and all of that stuff, and they need to hear about that at that age and say these are the activities that is important to be involved in. So continue to stay active and engaged. So, well, that is that's a lot of good information, and I know that you continually reload with information. So it would be our hope that you would agree to come back at some point in time and continue to be a guest on here, because we're always very enlightened and impressed with the work that you do. Certainly a good voice for Indiana agriculture, and we need to work together to get the word out.
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stick you with CJ next time. No, of course I'll come back. I had a good time. Thank you guys. And the good work that you guys are doing this is what it's all about. We need to work together, not against each other on this stuff. We often talk about, let's get the whole barnyard in this thing together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's all about.
Okay, great. Eric, thanks. You got anything?
No, I don't.
All
Thanks,
right.
Eric.
Eric, thank you for being here.
Thanks,
That's another
guys.
episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Thanks.